Somebody who is more sensitive, right? So there are certain genes related to sensitivity. So we talked about this before,
Yep.
the dandelion versus the orchid. You take that and then you combine a traumatic upbringing. Then you could say that this world is painful for this person. So their baseline level of just basic comfort is pain, whether it be psychological or physical. So there's a constant state of discomfort. So then you have that person next to somebody who doesn't have that, and the two of them use some sort of substance for the first time. Mm-hmm. One person goes from their baseline, which is relative comfort to euphoria. The other person goes from total discomfort to feeling normal to euphoria.
Yeah.
The distance is farther, that person's more likely to want to use that drug again.
Yep.
So you could find the stuff that would relate to that.
And so what's so interesting about both you and Stephen Lloyd talk about this exact combination of genes and environmental influences and events and trauma, right? So what's interesting about it is both of you have tremendous experience with people undergoing the condition and people who don't. And you mentioned intuition. Well, there's probably not a math formula in your brain that says, oh, Bob is going to do this or Pete is not going to do this. But your intuition, when you meet people, I bet you anything, versus mine, for example, is going to be highly enhanced with respect to predicting whether somebody is likely to become addicted.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. It's to a point of it being haunting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, what's interesting is what we have discovered by doing this work, and we've done now 320 projects across more than 60 diseases. So the patterns become clear about the kinds of things we're able to see. And what we were able to see is that data about human behavior, data about the genes, data about RNA and proteins floating around right now in the blood, all of those can contribute to predictions. They all contribute different levels, and some are better at discriminating today. But what's really interesting about it is, given that trauma creates emotional response, has physical effects, trauma and its after effects are going to be reflected in the biology of the patient.
Oh yeah, they're going to have sympathetic nervous system dominance. They're going to have more cortisol in their blood.
Right.
They can be chronically stressed, and you can measure all of that.
Right. So it shouldn't be surprising that we can discover biomarkers that not only tell you, do you have substance use disorder or are you likely to develop it? And here's the interesting study. Of the 6 data sets we used to discover the substance use disorder biomarkers, one was a methamphetamine data set. Mm-hmm. And there were 3 classes of patients. People who were never users, people who were former users and diagnosed with MUD, methamphetamine use disorder, and people currently with methamphetamine use disorder. And these people that are former were several years out of it. Now remember that the biomarkers we discovered were across all 6 substances. So we were not finding metabolites in the body of methamphetamine itself. So the biomarkers diagnosed, we said, okay, we're curious. Let's do the analysis a couple different ways. Let's put the former users with the current and say, as a group, how accurate is the discrimination between them and people who never used? And then, because they're former, let's assume they don't have substance use disorder anymore. Let's put them with the controls who never used. Mm-hmm. Which accuracy is better? Well, it turned out the accuracy was better when you grouped the two MUD and former MUD,
sure.
Which implies that the biology of the patients, those two groups of people, was more similar than the former users was to people who never used. Mm-hmm. One conclusion you could surmise from that is, okay, well, that either means that there are long-term effects of substance use disorder on the body that we're detecting and they're just persistent.
It's possible.
Or there was a baseline difference between the biology of those people and people who never used, and we're detecting that. And it might be both.
It probably is both. I think that I think there's genetic factors. For example, the DRD2 and DRD4 that I've talked about. There's a lot of literature around that. If you have less sensitive dopamine, then your basic level of satisfaction is going to be lower. Methamphetamine creates 1,000% increase in dopamine in the brain. That's going to feel a lot better for some people than others. That's so interesting.
So now you see why it's so important to us to say we have a perfectly agnostic mathematical method for discovery, but we desperately need the experts, not only the scientists, but the people who deal with the people with the conditions. Mm-hmm. Because, it's so easy in science, we talk about the ivory tower, to never understand what it's really like. And we've all sat on the couch and told the NFL team what to do next. But that's not like being on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have biases for sure. I mean, I can't not.
Well, you have to, because you've been practicing successfully,
right?
It's,
I mean, I have my own thoughts, and there is a lot of intuition. I'm just so excited to learn where I'm wrong and where I'm right, and I want to beat up all of these ideas to get to some higher form of truth, which is where Vahan and I have like really bonded over that idea.